This episode is brought to you by Feedback Now, the world's best real-time feedback platform, and by the Experience Strategy Collaboratives. Welcome to the Experience Strategy Podcast with Joe Pine, author of The Experience Economy, Dave Norton, an experienced futurist and founder of Stone Mantle, and me, Aranza Savas, an expert in coaching, motivation, and behavior change. Every week, we bring you a trending story from the news and share our hot takes. Now, usually we talk to you about one single article, but today we're going to riff on a broader topic because we all got this email from Dave weeks ago that says, I've been thinking a lot about travel in Europe and wonder if we should do a podcast on Italy. Here's some thoughts. Venice is bought by Bezos and Sanchez for a wedding. Lots of controversy. Good, bad for Italy? Who knows? 2, Americans worry about conflict with Europeans. Some locals are squirting tourists with water guns. There are also political chants involved in this. And number 3, why aren't people buying $1, €1 villas in Italy like they used to? And 4, how does a destination country become a place that's vibrant for both citizens and visitors? We'll share a few links in the stories that we all looked at as source for this conversation. But really, that last question is the one we want to explore with you today. Not just because we think we should all go to Italy, although Joe has made clear the point that everyone should do Italy, but because we believe there are lessons here, both for domestic and international travel, but also experiences in general. So, Dave, you kicked this topic off, and even though it is really early where you are, and you're probably the sleepiest of all of us, we're starting with you today.
I love Italy. I lived in Italy for 2 years. I speak Italian.
You sing in Italian.
I
Can
do.
you do the rest of the podcast in Italian?
Certo, se volete, io vi posso parlare. I speak with a very American accent.
Your voice gets deeper when you speak Italian too.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Um, so I love everything about Italy. It's been a while since we went there. I love everything about Europe. There's lots of great places to be in Europe. You know, we've talked about the fact that with each economy that we've gone through, there are challenges. So when we were in a goods-based economy, there were serious challenges. There were child labor laws that had to be addressed. Manufacturers had to, labor unions kind of happened at that time when we went into a service economy. There were issues that we had to address. We're in an experience economy, and we have been for some time now. And there are some real ramifications for when you have two very separate interest groups, both of which basically kind of want the same experience. So Venice, the Venetians would like to have Venice for themselves, right?
No, they really wouldn't.
No, you don't think so? Okay, well,
No.
whatever city it is.
Most people who live in Venice depend on the tourists.
Okay. But at the same time, you've got these big cruise ships that show up,
Right.
and they overpopulate the entire area. So Italy's one example. Obviously, Spain is another example. I think most of the squirt guns were happening in Spain and Portugal, but I've heard of them happening in Italy as well. Whereas there's this frustration that occurs, and the question is what is a culture supposed to do? What is a society supposed to do? What is the regular tourism guide supposed to do given these circumstances? And for the longest time, I'll just start this off with one idea. For the longest time, we have a lot of tourism folks have promoted ecotourism and authenticity of the site.
Mhm.
Okay, those have been two topic areas that they've gone after on a regular basis, and that's great, except that when you have 100,000 tourists in any location, that's not really that eco-friendly, and it's frankly not that authentic because you can find 100,000 Americans in America, right? You don't need to go to Italy to see that. And I think that there's an opportunity for a type of tourism that, and I don't know exactly what to describe it as, for a type of tourism where the tourist knows that the tourist is actually supporting the residents' experience as well. So you can have certain times of day when tourism is allowed. You can have certain locations where the mass tourism happens, and other locations where it says, "Hey, this is kind of a residential area. Please respect the quiet and the vibrancy that's associated with residents." And we don't really have a name for that type of a thing yet, but we need to. We need to have some kind of way of respecting boundaries and at the same time making sure that the experience is really good for both parties. So
Mhm.
that's kind of my starting thought for how you address
If
this.
it's not the right name, it's very related to slow tourism. We had
Mm.
slow food and other things, and now there
Mhm.
is a slow tourism, which obviously implies quieter and that. It's one of the reasons why um, I sort of find interesting that people are also railing against Airbnb. Which,
Mhm.
and yes, you can have party houses and that, but I don't know if you go to Venice for that, but it puts you among the locals. It gets you in the rhythm. You're going to the local market. You're not going into tourist areas necessarily, or you're visiting there and coming back. And what they're doing now with their services and experiences is much more connecting you with locals. So I think it's actually a much better way of traveling in places like that than going to a big fancy hotel and see more hotels take away older buildings that are there.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's also, I think, linked to what our friends over at Arrival, the In Destination Experiences group, shared with us. That I think the data from their research was something like 80% of dollars spent in these major European countries centered around five five specific tourist spots in a place where there were thousands of experiences available. All the money was going into just a handful of spots. And so it wasn't getting dispersed amongst the community. It was really all focused on these single areas, and that was one of the biggest concerns for destinations, certainly for providers. And it makes me think too about these Airbnb spots that I keep seeing that talk about. Remember when travel used to be an experience and not a contest? And so I think, in a way, they're trying to counter that. But interestingly, they also seem to be the ones fueling that, right? Because how many of those tours that they're offering and these experiences that they're offering actually center around the same things that everybody else is offering? Go to the Louvre, go to this major spot.
Yeah. And kind of building on this, I remember a trip that I took my kids on to San Gimignano, which is a medieval Tuscan city with these very tall towers. And we actually stayed um, in the town, which most people don't. So there is this interesting dynamic that we got to see where during the day the tourists kind of came through, and then after all of the buses left, the city kind of came to life, and it was a fascinating thing, and we loved it. And I think it's San Gimignano because they're not building any new buildings in San Gimignano. I can tell you that, um, because they have control over the size, the number of homes that are there, and the growth. they're able to kind of reach that very interesting balance between the two, which is a great thing.
Well, I
A great
think
thing.
part two of what these towns are struggling with is how fickle our tastes have become.
Mm,
So instead of there being, these big, well known tastemakers out in the world where you could, get a profile in the New York Times that says your restaurant is amazing and ride off that for decades. Now it's one TikTok influencer says this spot is amazing. It starts trending. It has a huge moment. They have to hire a bunch of people. They have to set up a bunch of systems. They have to invest a ton of capital. And then the next tastemaker comes along the next week, the next month, the next year, and says, no, this is the spot. And all of that traffic and energy redirects. And so it feels like it's got to be so challenging for these people to meet demand without losing their shirts in the long term. We know how much clutter there is in experience data and how hard it is to pinpoint the real issues. That's why we're so excited to introduce you to our strategic partner, Feedback Now, the world's best company for real-time feedback. You've heard us talk about contextual insights and understanding customer situations. Well, that's exactly what Feedback Now does. They process over 130 million customer opinions each year in over 50,000 unique locations around the world. Companies who employ Feedback Now see an average increase in satisfaction of 15% in just 6 weeks, my friends. Feedback Now is the choice for real-time sentiment data collection for some of the world's best airports, retailers, and hospital systems. Why? Because they don't just capture immediate customer sentiment. They help you see the patterns in your data. No amount of AI can compensate for not having real customers giving you real-time insights into your experience. That's what Feedback Now, with a little assistance from Stone Mantle, does. And friends, I am happy to announce that Feedback Now and Stone Mantle's Insights teams are giving away a free pilot program to one lucky listening company. All you have to do is go to their website, which we've listed in the show notes, share your idea for a real-time data project that you wish someone would help you with. The crack team at Stone Mantle and Feedback Now will review all of those entries for the one with the highest potential to produce the most interesting and profitable results and select one winner, which we'll announce right here on the show.
And this takes me to the next topic that I kind of think we need to companies need to address this, societies need to address this. The consumer today, the travel consumer, makes their decisions based on the situations that they find themselves in, or based on they have so much more data to support their decision making. And so when they decide that they're going to go to a new country that they've never been to before, they can set it up for their specific situation. And I think that societies have to be more responsive to situational markets, to the changes that are occurring. If you've got an influencer who's saying, we're going to go to, everybody must go to this place. Well, the society has to kind of adapt very quickly. Governments have to adapt very quickly to it. Otherwise, you end up with a Bezos Sanchez kind of situation where you've got protesters that are outside, and you've got some craziness, and that is, to me, is an example of how we have to adjust.
So, are you thinking more of a collective model where, like, we know Venice is going to have hot spots, so let's all work together to staff them and get them set up for success and ready to pivot for the next one?
Ready to pivot
so
for the next
instead of the individual, the collective as a tourist economy in each individual destination.
Exactly. And you need to have governmental people who are event people who can liaison with the tourism folks and very quickly adjust and adapt to what's going on. And I do think that there is some value that's being created from that. And I do think that tourists should pay for that value. I'm not against things like, maybe it's not called a tax. I don't like calling it a tax.
Admission fee is what it is.
That's exactly right, Joe. There needs to be a way of compensating the local economy for these adjustments that have to be made on a very dynamic basis, and tourists need to understand that it needs to be communicated to them, and so forth. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do to make that experience more dynamic and more successful for both residents and for tourists.
So I've been saying this for literally decades. I can point articles I wrote 15 years ago about the fact that tourist destinations should be charging admission, and there were already examples then, not many, but that's what Venice has finally gone to. Mm-hmm. Particularly with dynamic pricing, so that the more crowded it is, the higher it goes. And I don't think they're charging near enough, actually. But and I think that also is like even the hotel tax, right? Say it's an admission fee, right? Yeah, that's what it is, right? And make it very clear. And I think people will be more willing to pay it, and understanding that, and more better for the place. And that your admission fee, you're actually being hosted by somebody, so I'm going to treat them better than I otherwise would if you're taxing me, which immediately has that negative connotation. And it really it's not the solution, but it's the closest thing I think there is to the solution, or the catalyst for other solutions, because then it does give the place money to be able to spend into the upkeep, to be able to share with the people that are being hurt by the tourist traffic, as opposed to those that are being helped by the tourist traffic.
Well, it's like the congestion pricing in New York City. I think the naming has really been influential in the perspective on it. And so I think your point is really well taken there. And it like all of the data shows that these taxes, these pricing, however you want to label it, is effective in shifting patterns, even though it's a relatively nominal fee.
That's simply the law of economics. Of course, prices matter.
I mean, but I think we fail to look often at it holistically. Going back to Dave's original point, that if we can promote these and market these in the way some big public health measures have been marketed over time, and point to the good that they do for the environment, for the workers, for the broader community, for the city itself, right? Like show us the money, show us what this is going to mean for us. And I think you'll see a lot more excitement and enthusiasm for the holistic value of this stuff. But oftentimes we neglect the marketing side of it. We don't tell a story.
I think that there's also an opportunity for the local tour operator to get into more of a subscription model for their fees. So they're used to thinking in terms of you're going on a trip, we're going to charge you $1,000 or something along that line, and you get a one-time shot at this. But I think that there would be demand for certain customers to, hey, I like this tourism group. They've got multiple destinations. Start thinking about subscription. Mm-hmm. How do you get that repeat business? How do you stay connected to them with content that is useful to them? And that's also a way of generating revenue. And I don't know that cities can do a subscription. I don't know. Maybe they could. Maybe. Who knows?
I mean, I think countries, it could be really interesting, right? Like to think about essentially collecting your experiences across different regions of a country and creating some sort of continuous journey across them that's really thoughtful and intentional, integrating some of our transformative experiences principle so that it's essentially, an eat, pray, love across a country that changes you forever, maybe over the course of a decade,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
entering some sort of
Well,
long-term
I mean,
relationship.
that'd be a very much of a transformation model, right? Which
Yep.
generally requires not one life-changing experience, but a series of experiences that change you
That's
over
right.
time. And the subscription model is exactly the right way to be able to do that, so that you are handling them. I also talked to a travel designer recently who works with very high net worth individuals, family, not foundations, not the right word, but family businesses, where they have their own family office. That's the word I'm looking for, the family offices. And so they might have, a family of 15 people, counting grandkids, and they go on a $1 million vacation, a couple of times a year. And one of the things he did is he put into that, every single one is, you're going to do something for the community that you're going in.
Mm.
Right. And they spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars as part of that $1 million is poured in the community to, like, refurbish a school or to build housing and so forth. And they make, and the guys just very adamant about it, like, and if you don't do that, I'm not working with you. Right. And so I think that can also be brought down to lower price levels. The Transformational Travel Council works on that and trying to make the community that you go in, the destination, better off for you being there rather than worse off for you being there. And a subscription model, again, could help with that, but there are other ways as well, sort of like at any price point, that you're going to do something for the community while you're here.
Well, one of the things that leads us to is this idea that people don't necessarily travel just for authenticity, just for ecotourism, but they travel for other purposes. Transformation is one of those purposes. Participating in transformation is or helping somebody else, some location to transform,
Mm.
is a form of that type of thing. There are all kinds of different reasons why people travel. Sometimes they don't think about those reasons. And I think that a lot of these destinations need to talk about different reasons for going to see Europe. It can't always be eat, pray, love, right? Like, there needs to be other reasons. We need to provide other reasons for them to show up. And personal transformation, I guess eat, pray, love kind of is a personal transformation, right? But there needs to
Definitely.
be other reasons why we go. And then this is the perfect spot for you. You thought you wanted to go to Venice, spend a day in Venice just because you need to check it off your list.
Right.
But we want you to go and see this location, this other location, because it's more aligned with what your purpose is, what you're trying to accomplish on this particular trip.
Well, there's also lots of reasons people don't do that, right? That's lots of reasons why people's only exposure to Italy is Epcot Center. It's true. And that's the closest to Italy many, many, many people will ever get. And there's lots of reasons for that. And so I think, too, thinking about who your traveler is, what their comfort level and their needs are, so that you meet them where they are, whether they're a seasoned traveler who's been around the world and just wants to go deeper and immerse further, and the people who are just sticking their toes in the water for the first time and are scared out of their minds.
Yeah, well, there's no. Take that a step further as well. There's nothing wrong with having a theme park with roller coasters in a destination
Sure.
as well. If you want to attract all of your young, crazy, loud tourists to one particular place, put a bunch of roller coasters there, and they'll go and they'll have a great time, and then you don't have to deal with them in some of your culturally significant locations because they're off having fun. They're still getting a little bit of the destination, whatever that country is, but they're also getting a theme park as well. So I think I don't know, maybe that's irreverent when
Well,
it comes to
yeah.
Italy, but still.
I think in general, more destinations need to be using more principles of transformational travel. They need to be doing a better job of asking people what they care about, what they're ready for, and what success would look like as they help them design their itineraries from whatever level. And my daughter just got back from Tokyo with a choir trip, and she was so offended that they took them to all these malls. She was like, what is this? And like, this isn't travel, because she's gotten to travel and she's grown up with my values. Whereas a lot of our classmates had different values and goals. And so I think it was just a really good reminder to me that we're all kind of coming at this from different places, and somebody needs to ask us those questions if they're going to be our guide or support in that process. And I think what we're all calling for is for governments and associations to be more thoughtful in terms of how they consider the needs of the traveler, the destination, and the environment, and importantly, the community that is creating that space and that destination, and not disregarding any of the key facets. And that's what I like so much about these entry fees, these attraction fees that Joe was talking about, because it says, hey, you realize that Venice is Venice because of not the individual attractions, and not because of that restaurant that you went to. It's because of the plaza. It's because of the cobblestone on the street. It's because of the peculiar way that the light hits the ancient cathedral. And
Because of the
all of that
water
is a part of the
laughing
experience. The what? That's right. It's all of these things coming together, and that is all the people.
That made it happen. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm excited to share this episode with all the folks in transformational travel and travel in general that we are so fortunate to work with. They're really fighting the good fight out there, and such a joy to work with Transformational Travel Council, Sierra Club, Arrival, and so many more, and to see the great work that they are doing. For those of you listening, let us know what you want to hear about next. Join us over at the Experience Strategist Substack, where Joe, Dave, and I love to hang out and chat with you about experience strategy.